Obama put an actual human being in Trump's campaign. Nixon knew nothing about the plumbers, but what did Obama know about the mole in the Trump campaign, and when did he know it? So if you really want to draw the Watergate analogy, it points right to Barack Obama. Note, none of that is being investigated.
All right, to discuss that with us, Joe DiGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. Joe, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, obviously, Rush Limbaugh there referring to the piece that Kimberly Strassel wrote in the Wall Street Journal about a mysterious FBI source that a lot are saying links to someone being embedded in the Trump campaign as some kind of a mole. What do you think of this?
Well, it's probably true, number one. But with regard to Kimberly's theory, most of us who've been analyzing this as prosecutors when analyze something have long concluded that President Obama was well aware of all the activities involving the investigation, whether it was counterintelligence or whatever, and that has been revealed by the text messages between Strzok and Page and others. So it's pretty clear that the president and Susan Rice and Ben Rhodes and Brennan and Clapper were not only well aware, but may very well have been instigators of certain specific counterintelligence operations. It's pretty clear that Brennan along with Clapper, caused Comey to begin the investigation. The issue now is, and this is an unanswered question, when did it begin? We've been told it was when George Papadopoulos flapped his jaw. We now know that is not true, that it began earlier than that. But the question is, did it begin because there was an FBI spy? I choose to call the person a spy, not an informant, inside the Trump campaign. That is probably true. And what it does is it underscores what an outrageous and unbelievable, unconstitutional investigation this was that was authorized by Comey and Clapper and Brennan. They set in motion something before an election to spy on the ticket leader of the opposing party. There's just no other way to describe this. And for people to think otherwise, they're delusional. They're the ones who are delusional. The available factual evidence indicates that the awesome investigative power of the U.S. law enforcement community and the intelligence community was used by President Obama and his minions to spy on the presidential candidate of the opposing party. And the Mueller investigation is the direct result of that. And it's pretty clear that Bob Mueller doesn't give a hoot about the Constitution or the president or the well-being of the country, and he's just going to continue to roll on. And shame on Mueller and shame on Rosenstein at the same time.
Do you believe that the White House is doing enough to compel the Justice Department here to cooperate with Congress? I saw John Kelly last week in phone calls with Rod Rosenstein urging them to do things. It did move the ball a bit, but is the White House doing enough?
They're doing as much as they can politically without causing another crisis for the White House. But I will tell you this about those meetings with John Kelly. They were not nice. Mr. Rosenstein was given an ultimatum and told to get his fanny in gear. Now, ask yourself this question. Why did it take the Chief of Staff of the President of the United States to convince the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General that their job is to cooperate with Congress in an investigation into illegal activity by the FBI, the Department of Justice under Obama, and the U.S. intelligence community under Obama? They have been given an ultimatum by Kelly. It was a very unpleasant set of conversations, I am told by people in the know. And Mr. Rosenstein's tenuous hold on office gets more tenuous.
Yeah, I saw that he had to cut short a trip to New York, and he had to rush back to Washington to comply.
Mr. Rosenstein is fond of giving speeches. It's what he does best because it doesn't involve using his brain to do something which is much more important, which is responding to legitimate congressional oversight. Rosenstein has become an embarrassment to the administration. He may be beloved by some of the people in the department, particularly the 40-year holdovers from a bunch of administrations. But in fact, Rosenstein is now a drag on the administration. But even more seriously, he's a drag on the Department of Justice and continues to lead them into embarrassing situations with the House of representative. So we'll see how long this little charade that Rosenstein has been conducting continues.
Joe, I just want to quickly go back to Kimberly Strassel's piece about this spy in the Trump campaign. She says she's pretty sure she knows who it is.
Well, we all do.
I was going to ask, does everyone know who it is?
Yes. It's a fellow who's associated with Cambridge and American universities. He's a former American spy. Everybody knows his name and who he is. It's pretty obvious. It's been written about extensively on a number of blogs, and he certainly fits the profile, and all of his activities are certainly in line with all the activities that have been reported in the press.
Would you like to float a name or maybe some initials?
I believe S.M.
Okay.
S as in Sam?
S as in Sam, M as in... let's see, Merkel, Angela Merkel.
Oh, my goodness. All right. All right. So
You don't want to give us a name,
isn't it a treat that the Germans won't show up for the opening of the American embassy?
Oh, it's a real treat. Yeah.
Only the Krauts could figure out a way to embarrass themselves so obviously.
Yeah.
If the folks who gave us the Holocaust can't show up for something as peaceful as the opening of an embassy.
It's amazing stuff. Well, they'll come around. Let's talk Chuck Grassley. He's been pressing the Justice Department and the FBI for a bunch of details related to Mike Flynn's conversation with the Russian ambassador. What do we know about this?
Well, Chairman Grassley quite properly wants to see the underlying 302 forms of the FBI agents who did the interview, the ambush interview of Flynn at the White House during the transition period, rather shortly after the inauguration. It's pretty obvious that Comey and McCabe got together and decided they wanted to frame Flynn because they believe, believe it or not, that he was a danger to the Constitution. Not them. He was a danger. When all he was doing was communicating with people he had a legitimate right to communicate with, both as a candidate's foreign policy advisor and as the national security advisor designate and as the national security advisor. So Grassley wants to see the notes of those people, and he wants to interview the one agent who was there, who was very, very, very serious about how Flynn did not deceive. That agent that he wants to interview is the agent who went to the Inspector General and complained about the conduct of Strzok and McCabe.
All right, Joe, we have more for you. We have a couple more questions for you, so please do not go anywhere. It's 7:15. It's time for WMAL Traffic and Weather. We're here with Joe DiGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. We were talking about Robert Mueller and Chuck Grassley in Congress fighting back and forth, trying to get information. Something very interesting while all that was going on happened. We know that Mueller has indicted a bunch of Russians, I think 13 Russians and some corporations. Something interesting, though, happened in one of the courtrooms where the judge asked one of the two lawyers representing an accused Russian company called Concord Management and Consulting if he was representing another company, Concord Catering. We find out that the company didn't exist at the time of the Mueller investigation. It seems Mr. Mueller got an indictment for a company that didn't exist. How does that happen?
Well, I think they rushed to judgment on their indictment of these Russian people. Again, as I think we discussed, this indictment of these Russian individuals, 3 corporations and 10 individuals, was an effort to put the word Russian back into the investigation. It was, of course, of no moment, since the Mueller people believed that they would never have to deal with any of the defendants, since they would never show up in court. Unfortunately for them, one of the Russian corporations hired very competent local counsel, former assistant U.S. attorneys in my office, people that I know and respect, who then entered an appearance on behalf of the company and began to demand criminal discovery from Mueller's office. Mueller then said, no, we're not prepared to go forward. And the judge in the case said, oh, yes, you are. If you've indicted a case, presumably you know what you're doing. Well, apparently they didn't know what they were doing. And again, this was a show indictment. It had no real purpose other than to put the word Russian back in the investigation.
How consequential is this discovery process?
Well, they can get a lot of information. They may also get enough information to prove prosecutorial misconduct, which Mueller's office is perfectly capable of, given the key role that Andrew Weissman, one of the most sanctioned former federal prosecutors in the history of the Department of Justice. Very few Justice Department lawyers have been accused of unethical conduct and unprofessional conduct more than Andrew Weissman. He is known as a sleazy, unprofessional prosecutor who not only pushes the envelope to the edge but crosses it regularly. He is widely respected inside the department, which tells you something about the career people at the department.
Joe, my general feeling, especially when I see this happening with Mueller and also getting slapped down 2 weeks ago by the one judge, that judge, by the way, has not issued any kind of ruling as far as being able to see the scope memo, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so how long do we have to wait for that? Or do we have to wait long enough for them to get to him and make him change his mind?
Well, the judge has given them a schedule. He gave them 2 weeks to produce the memo. And I assume at the end of those 2 weeks, they're either going to produce the memo in some redacted form or in an unredacted form, or he will issue an order. Now, he has pending before him a whole bunch of motions by Mr. Manafort's people, and one of the things he could do is he could also throw out all the evidence that was seized during the search, the early morning raid of the Manafort home by the FBI, because, as you know, that raid occurred before the second Rosenstein memo, which authorized the investigation into that part of Manafort's activities, which had heretofore not been authorized.
Joe, I want to just pivot very quickly into something new that we now have a Mueller's team investigating now, donations to President Trump's inauguration. This is a whole new field, fertile ground for them.
After the election.
After the election. Well, we don't know what the scope of his investigation was, so he can continue to do that. Is it common for foreign governments or foreign entities rather to donate to an inauguration?
No, it's not. People try to, and generally they're told they can't. An inauguration, however, is a semi-private event, and the law in this area is very unclear. There's nothing wrong with it if somebody wants to give a donation to an inauguration, but I think most people associated with inaugurations don't take foreign money.
Interesting. So can we at this point say that Russian collusion is dead? All right, have we gotten to that point?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that Russian collusion, insofar as it involves the President of the United States and anyone close to him, is over. There is no evidence of it and hasn't been from the very beginning. I think the more serious question is, lest we all forget, remember, Jeff Sessions appointed Mr. Huber from Utah to investigate the FISA warrant application process and the unmasking and everything related to it. That is the much more important investigation. Mr. Mueller's investigation of collusion is a professional embarrassment to federal law enforcement. It's an embarrassment to everyone except Bob Mueller. Well, and that's because he's the dog with a bone right now. And it's a very sad commentary on how people like Bob Mueller stay too long at the fair.
Well, I know you've got your ear to the ground on a lot of these issues. So on both of them, one is will the Mueller investigation wrap up prior to the midterm elections in your view? And the second here is do you know anything about the Huber investigation and if it's moving along?
I know nothing about the Huber investigation. I have no idea what Mueller is going to do. That will all revolve around the pretextual, sought-after interview of the President of the United States, which is a federal law enforcement joke. This president knows nothing about anything, and the only reason they want to investigate him is to lay a perjury trap, number one, and to illegally gather information through a grand jury subpoena to put in an impeachment recommendation to the Deputy Attorney General for the House of Representatives. That is an illegal use of a grand jury subpoena. You can use a grand jury subpoena to get evidence for a criminal case. Since they say they have no criminal case against the president, what is the purpose of the grand jury subpoena? It's fairly obvious. It is a pretextual grand jury subpoena.
Interesting. Well, Joe, I know we love when we have you on. I know the listeners do. I will get messages from listeners before you come on. Could you please ask Joe this? Can you please ask Joe that? So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time with us every Monday.
Great to talk to you.
Take care. 7:23 on WMA.